Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo O. Bo Willette is my name. It's Wednesday, January 25th. Had an amazing evening yesterday, wonderful wedding I was a part of, and it was super fun. And we had quite a Devo yesterday. Now we get quite a Devo today, too. One of those another chapters where you're kind of like, oh my, this is quite a chapter in the Bible. So 2 Samuel chapter 20. You could always check out any of the archives at my personal YouTube page, Bo Willette. And that's O-U-E. L-L-E-T-T-E. O-U-E-L-L-E-T-T-E. Check it out there, and you can get into a lot of books of the Bible that you want to. So, hey, Craig says he's ready to go, so let's get going. Paul is in the house, too. Super stoked about that. And so let's get going and get in the Word. Get focused a little bit, right? That's kind of what Devos are about. Okay. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Living Bible. It's kind of a paraphrase version, just to kind of bring out some of the nuances of this chapter because I find it pretty interesting. We're going to focus a little bit on Joab today. Joab has a history of being quite a impulsive guy, one who wants to stay in position of power and will do some pretty radical things to get that accomplished. He worked alongside King David. This guy was a warrior, like most of the inner circle of David. And it's kind of interesting, but King David, you think he would have a bunch of people from Israel, like Israelites, around him, but that's not kind of how it was. There was some that were Israelites, and there's others, quite a bit, that weren't. And you got to remember, David spent time on the run, if you will, from the previous king. And in doing so, David picked up a lot of, bandits, if you will, a lot of interesting folk from all over, and raiders, if you will. And David was a person who raided places for over a year. So, if you will, I can only equate it coming from Los Angeles, where, you're kind of, you kind of are in a group with a bunch of really kind of rebels in a lot of ways. And you kind of form a gang somewhat, a group. And that's kind of how I kind of can relate a little bit to King David and his kind of history of being on the run and being, picking up a lot of interesting folk along the way. And so, it says, then a hot-headed whose name was Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, blew a trumpet and yelled. And so whenever we hear Benjamite, we go, oh, tribe of Benjamin. That was Saul. Saul's, the previous king's family was, they were all from the line of Benjamin. So the tribe of Benjamin in Israel. And what does this guy Sheba say of Bichri or Bichri? It says, we want nothing to do with David. Come on, you men of Israel. Let's get out of here. He's not our king. So even though David is now coming into Jerusalem, not everybody's on the page. And, for sure. And I'm sure you've had moments too where you're at your job or something like that, and everybody seems to be on the page, but you just ain't on the page. You're not agreeing with everything. And that's how this guy Sheba is. And so all except Judah and Benjamin turned around and deserted David and followed Sheba. So interesting, right? So all except Judah and Benjamin turned around and deserted David and followed Sheba. So even though this guy was a Benjamite, it sounds like not all of his tribe was with him. But a lot of other people from Israel were. It says, but the men of Judah stayed with their king, accompanying him from the Jordan to Jerusalem. When he arrived at his palace in Jerusalem, the king instructed that his 10 wives or concubines, which he had left to keep house, should be placed in seclusion. Their needs were to be cared for, he said, but he would no longer sleep with them as his wives, so they remained in virtual widowhood until their deaths. Now remember, these are the 10 concubines that David's son, Absalom, was given advice by Ahithophel to like go into Jerusalem, as your dad, as your dad is being kicked out of Jerusalem, you get in there and you take his concubines and you publicly, you make sure they know, everybody knows you're being intimate with them. And so Absalom did that as a sign of saying, hey, I am against my dad. I am taking over. I mean, pretty loud statement for sure to do in a public way, right? All the news there, all the cameras going on, everybody taking the pictures of what's going on, with Absalom and the wives, the concubines of David. Pretty radical. Should David have had the concubines in the first place? The answer is no, right? A king shall not multiply wives, Deuteronomy 17:17, right? He shouldn't have done that, but he did it. And you see, man, sometimes we do things that, boy, we always go, man, I look back on that and I go, oh, that wasn't a good idea, right? Well, David sets these ladies aside, and which is really an act of mercy probably on King David's part. He probably maybe could have killed him. I don't know, but what he does is he puts them in seclusion, takes care of them the rest of their life. And that's it. He doesn't just, go back and being intimate with them. And so, I think maybe David at this point, if we look at where he's at spiritually, maybe he's trying to fulfill a passage in the book of Deuteronomy. There is a passage there about wives and things like that. I'm not going to get into it right now in the Devo, but there's a passage in there that talks about, hey, if your wife leaves you and goes with another man, then she can't divorce him and then go back to the first, and maybe that's where David's at. I don't know. It doesn't say, but maybe he is like focusing on that and going, hey, I'm not supposed to be intimate, So it says, the king instructed Amasa to mobilize the army of Judah within 3 days and to report back at that time. So Amasa went out to notify the troops, but it took him longer than 3 days that it was given to him. Then David said to Abishai, that fellow Sheba is going to hurt us more than Absalom did. Quick, take my bodyguard and chase after him before he gets into a fortified city where he can't be reached. So Abishai and Joab, so Joab's there, Joab's a part of this, but he's not the leader. It's kind of interesting. Joab's probably, used to being a leader. He kind of, is expected to be a leader. And he's definitely taken things into his own hands in the past. So, but he's now not being the one directed by the king. Abishai is. And Joab sets out with Abishai after Sheba, with an elite guard from Joab's army and the king's own bodyguard. Now, doesn't it just irk you when you think like you're supposed to be in a leader? You're supposed to be the person kind of in command. But you know what? It's you're just not put in that position. Someone else is, and you have to follow. And it feels kind of, like, hey, shouldn't I be the person kind of there? Like, why am I not? Now, what kind of bothers me of my own heart is that I sometimes feel this way, and I have to really check where my heart is, check where my mind is, check what I'm thinking. Am I really thinking about Jesus's words where he says, the greatest shall be the servant of them all? Do I really believe the man from Nazareth? Do I really believe the Rabbi Jesus, the Messiah Jesus? And what he says, the greatest will be the servant of them all. Or do I think like, no, that's not really true. The greatest isn't the servant of them all. The greatest is the one who's the leader. He's the top dog. Do I want to be like the disciples? Hey, who's the greatest in the kingdom? I mean, isn't it us? Isn't it us? Look at what we're doing. Isn't it like that? It's hard to, go, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't about me. Maybe it's about God's glory, and just I need to learn how to serve the Lord wherever the Lord would have me in his house. That's a blessing. Now, some of King David's Psalms are kind of like this. When we read King David's Psalms, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord, right? Than dwell amongst kings. He talks about, I'd rather just be the servant. I'd rather just be the guy who's kind of, picking up the paper, in the parking lot, just the doorkeeper opening up the door. Hey, how you doing? I'd like to be that guy at church who just, it's the greeter, right? Hey, how you doing? You doing great? Okay, great. That kind of thing. That doesn't seem like a lofty position in the kingdom, but yet David knew that just being used by God in any capacity is absolutely astounding. Well, Joab didn't get that memo. And Joab, though he was here to support Abishai in going to head off Sheba, of another, to prevent another insurrection, if you will, or another rebellion. Let's see what happens. And as they arrived at the great stone in Gibeon, they came face to face with Amasa. Joab was wearing his uniform with a dagger strapped to his side, and he stepped toward the great Amasa. He stealthily slipped the dagger from his sheath. I'm glad to see you, my brother, Joab said, and took him by the beard with his right hand as though to kiss him. Oh, okay. So it's like, deceived with the kiss. That sounds familiar, right? Deceiving someone with a beautiful kiss. Greet one another, the Bible says in the New Testament, with a what? A holy kiss, right? Yeah. A very beautiful Middle Eastern way of greeting one another. Very intimate. Us in our country struggle with that. We kind of tend to like our distance. We're like, oh, hey, don't coming in too close. Handshake, right? That kind of thing. So what does Joab do? It says, Amasa didn't notice the dagger in his left hand, so Joab stabbed him in the stomach with it, so that his bowels gushed out onto the ground. He did not need to strike him again, and he died there. And Joab and his brother Abishai left him lying there and continued after Sheba. Now, just so you know, the king, remember, instructed Amasa to mobilize the army of Judah, right? Within 3 days and report back in time. And it took Amasa a little while longer. So remember, David goes, you know what? I don't know if everything's going so well. I didn't get news on what's going on with Amasa, so I'm going to send another delegation out. And he sends what? He sends Abishai and Joab. And there they are, and Joab, of course, with his bro, Abishai. And what goes on? Joab strikes one of his own commanders, one of the commanders of David, who Joab is serving. They're on the same team. I mean, this is like in the dugout. You're playing Little League ball, and you're in the dugout, and the guy who has your position is doing good, and you drop a brick on his toe, and he can't play. I guess I get to play, kind of thing. I mean, a real childish attitude here. But notice how maybe envy creeps into our hearts, where we get this idea of like, it's not just a jealousy, but it's an envy. So it's jealousy with like a hatred towards the person who got the blessing, and you almost wish they would be hurt or something would happen to them. to secure maybe your position. And boy, this is kind of the way of the world, you know. I would imagine envy runs through everybody's lives. And it's something that either people deal with good or people don't. Either people, you know, go, hey, you know what? And they're honest and they go, gosh, I got envy in my heart. Why do I not want to see other people succeed? Why am I not blessed by the success of Amasa? You know, why do I see him as a threat to my position? And, you know, that kind of fear that results in envy. You know, you start getting to the roots of what's going on in you. And you kind of just creep out and go, dang, I am a mess, you know. When the Bible says no one living before God is righteous, it is telling the truth, scientific fact, no doubt. If you're an atheist out there, how can you deny that? We got an issue. We got a problem. All of us humans have these ways about us where we don't see other people's success as a blessing. We see it as instead, sometimes as a curse. And many times we don't see it well at all, right? And so Joab here kills Amasa. Abishai, his brothers with him. And it says, one of Joab's young officers shouted to Amasa's troops, if you are for David, come and follow Joab. You can see Joab's really taking matters into his own hands. Another aspect of this devotion I think of too is, what kind of friend am I? You know, I think of Joab being a friend of David. You know, what kind of friend am I? Am I a friend like Joab? You know, am I that kind of friend that I am taking matters into my own hands, not paying attention, you know, to what my friend is desiring or wanting? Am I going off cuff? Am I being respectful? You know, that kind of thing. And obviously Joab was none of these things. He took things into his own hands. His troops knew that Joab was an amazing leader, amazing warrior. I mean, God, he cuts this guy with one blow, opens up his stomach. I mean, rough stuff, man. I mean, you got to be pretty skilled to be doing this stuff. In the art of knife work, I guess you could say. You know, you hate to call killing people artwork, that's for sure. But you know what I mean by that kind of just savagery. This isn't his first go-around. That's the point. But Amasa lay in his blood in the middle of the road, and when Joab's young officers saw that a crowd was gathering around to stare at him, they dragged him off the road into the field and threw a garment over him. Oh, that's not such a very respectful thing to do. With the body out of the way, everyone went on with Joab to capture Sheba. So now Joab is seen as the one who's in the lead, you know, the commander. Everybody's paying attention to Joab. Joab has flexed his muscles. He is, in a sense, the bully on the block, you know. And how do I get my way? Do I do it by throwing my weight around? I don't got much weight around, obviously, but do you do it by throwing your will around? You know, I'm going to just move things. You know, I'm going to move my kids. I'm going to move my, you know. And, you know, when kids are little, you can pick them up and move them from one place to another. That's the beauty of having a little 2-year-old. But then they get 13. Then they get 15. And they keep going. And then you can't just pick up your 20-year-old and move your 20-year-old in position. Now it takes patience. It takes friendship. It takes love. It takes care. It takes investment. Other things that if you're not good at that and you've been just trying to, you know, just move things physically forever, you know, you're going to succumb to manipulation, verbal words of hatred to try to move someone because you haven't learned how to love, how to care for a person in a proper way. All you know how to do is do what Joab does, and that is to move people through force. Get things to happen by force. He's forcing his will on him. Meanwhile, Sheba had traveled across Israel to mobilize his own clan at Bitri, at the city of Abel, at Beth Makkah. When Joab's forces arrived, they besieged Abel and built a mound on top of the city wall and began battering it down. So Joab does what Joab does best. He goes to war. But a wise woman in the city called out to Joab, "Listen to me, Joab. Come over here so I can talk to you." This is awesome. Hey, what do we need? We need a woman, a wise woman on the scene, right? And here she approaches Joab. Amazing. Talk about the boldness and the courage of this woman. And he replies, "Yep, I'm Joab." And so she told him, "There used to be here a saying, if you want to settle an argument, ask advice at Abel. For we always give wise counsel. You are destroying an ancient peace-loving city loyal to Israel. Should you destroy what is the Lord's?" So a bunch of counselors live in Abel. They seem to be wise. They seem to be, focused, And she asked Joab a little question. "Hey, Joab, man, are you going to, go against God? I mean, this is God's city. Are you going to fight, do a civil war against the Lord's, places? This is what he's established." And Joab replied, "This isn't it at all. All I want is a man named Sheba from the hill country of Ephraim, who has revolted against King David. If you will deliver him to me, we will leave the city in peace." Joab says, "Hey, man, I don't want to go against God's places. I don't want to go against this place Abel or the people of Abel. I just want this person Sheba." Well, probably Joab should have said that at the beginning, but Joab, being Joab, man was going to throw his weight around, right? Get his will done, and so he wants to lead. He says, "Hey, just bring me out this Sheba guy." And it says, "All right," the woman replied, "we will throw his head over the wall to you." Wow. Then the woman went to the people with her advice, and they cut off Sheba's head and threw it out to Joab. And he blew the trumpet and called his troops back from the attack, and they returned to the king at Jerusalem. Joab was commander-in-chief of the army, and Benaniah was in charge of the king's bodyguard. Adoram was in charge of the forced labor battalions, and Jehoshaphat was the historian who kept the records. Wow, that's cool. There you go. Jehoshaphat kept the records, written records back in the day. Yeah, they really wrote down stuff back in the day. It's called history. Sheva was the secretary, and Zadok and Abiathar were the chief priest. Ira and Yarite was David's personal chaplain. Very cool advisors. And this is so neat. This is what's beautiful about the Bible. It's not talking about once upon a time in a galaxy far, far and away. It's recording history, things that really happened, people that really were, their tribes, their clans, their people. I mean, unbelievable historical records are in the Bible. That's why you can take classes like biblical archaeology. And because there's something to it. It's history. Well, this woman, she ends up saying, "Hey, I'm going to do Joab you a favor. I know where the Sheba's at. I'm going to go speak to our city, this wise city, and we're going to go take care of this Sheba so you don't have to attack the city." And that was some good wisdom on her part. Absolutely. Hey, she could have said, "Yeah, Joab, go into the city and find him." But Joab would have wrecked things up, because Joab is reckless. He's the one who goes in, does his will, and there's tons of collateral damage. But this lady was wise and said, "You're just doing this because of one guy? Well, hold on." And then she has a meeting, and they deal with this one person. And he's publicly he's executed, and obviously being beheaded. And his head is given over to Joab, so Joab knows for certain that this person has been dealt with. Because of what? His rebellion from the kingship of David. to the point of where he is going to make himself king and rule. And that, it just can't happen. And so this person's judged, and this woman is definitely praised for her attitude, her courage. Like I say, doesn't say a man did it. It was a woman who did it. And that's beautiful. I think that all the way back in 2 Samuel, right, way 1,000 years before Jesus, you have wise women being mentioned, and their historical records being written down. And that's just, to me, that's absolutely liberating and way ahead of its day, and quite awesome. So Joab, a lot of interesting things we can learn from Joab, maybe what not to do again, but definitely look at our own hearts and go, wow, how am I, doing with envy? How am I doing with, how do I think of my fellow workers? How do I think of my boss? How do I think of my friends? How am I? Do I try to just get my way by force? Or am I more wise, like this woman, who's definitely a contrast to Joab, uses some wisdom along the way, and some tact, wise tact, right? And some godly wisdom, for sure. Hey, let's not destroy the city of God, let's think about this. So, maybe what Joab needed more than ever is a place of good counsel, and he finally finds some. Definitely, he's given some anyway from this town of Abel. So let's not throw out good, wise counsel, and always remember the Holy Spirit is our counselor. That's right. So you guys have a great one. Okay, thanks for joining me on the devotion. Take care. Bye-bye.